All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining the IBC MENA Online Connect for May. We have great pleasure in welcoming Nicholas Bruneau, who is dialing in from Portugal today. Nicholas is a communications consultant who's worked for different global organizations such as UN, World Bank, and the EU, and he's managed digital advocacy campaigns on international development, education, sustainability, etc. And recently has come out with a book called Engage with Impact, which is a leading digital advocacy guide. Welcome to you, Nicholas. Welcome to everyone joining us today. And I will hand it over to you, Nicholas.
Great. Thank you very much. One of the things that came up from the book was initially a study that I did, which was a survey of over 250 comms and marketing professionals. And one of the things that they said was that the pandemic actually helped them to become more agile, to adopt new ways of doing things, and of course, to engage more online. So that was the source for the book, which then started. I wrote during the last 3 years, and then which allowed me to develop this AGILE framework. So I'll just briefly go over, I guess today, just to present the AGILE framework. We can do a bit of a deep dive session afterwards, and then any discussion or Q&A. If you'd like, then I'll just a little bit about myself. So I'm comms consultant focused on social impact comms, with a strong focus on digital communications. And so right now I'm working with the UN, but then previously with the World Bank and EU, as well as other nonprofits. And yes, I'm based in Cascais, Portugal. And so hi Monique. Good to see you. And so the Agile framework is essentially what I tried to do is to look at, okay, what are the major areas if you're looking to upscale your digital comms? What are the different steps that you should be taking in order to really, reach a successful and impactful communications practice? So it starts by, having a mindset change internally, and then after that, building up towards, developing the skills, and then going through these steps. So it's first adopting a startup mentality, going digital first, inspiring with personal stories, leveraging your content, and empowering your community. And then I'll go through each of these, but they all kind of like build on each other throughout. So the first is adopting a startup mentality. And so what I tried to look at was, what do startups do that we can learn from, that we can adopt in our communications? So what does that mean? So I looked at, of course, startups, they innovate, they experiment, they collaborate, they develop that sort of a strong vision, and also a lot of ways in which they can go faster. So templates, and then they constantly also measure and adapt. So they will change their product or different things according to the what's happening. So that systems mentality kind of is something that I looked into, and then discussed with communications managers, looking at how they increase collaboration. So different ways in which you can increase collaboration, or different ways in which you can develop templates that allows sort of internal communications to be much easier and smoother. I think that, we all sometimes work a lot in silos. So how can we break those silos so that internally we're really facilitating internal communications across the organization. So that is the startup mentality. And then the next step is to go digital first. So that's acquiring the skills to be able to be successful online. So perhaps it can be, if you want to create more videos, it's creating a video booth or creating storyboard templates for your videos, or making sure that for each of your press releases, for example, there's it's an adaptation with social media and different ways in which you can sort of make sure that you have a strong presence online with perhaps SEO copywriting, and then also developing what I call a digital funnel, which allows you to then look at how can I turn my fans and my followers on social media into, for example, newsletter subscribers? How can I build that engagement? So that is a strong step towards then afterwards, then creating the stories. So once you have the skills, once you have the digital skills, then how can you create some personal stories? So I think this is all about employee advocacy initially. So looking at working with your C-suite, and then because now that you've developed some, video or storytelling templates, then you're able to then work internally with your C-suite or with subject matter experts to really build up your presence online, so that it's not just your corporate presence, but you have actually, that human element that is really important nowadays on social media. And then that, of course, can also include working with influencers and then having that kind of influencer stories as well. And then once you then have that already built up, the next step is to really leverage our content. And this is all about repurposing. So I put together in the book a content repurposing checklist, but essentially it's trying to see, okay, if we're coming up with a Renew report, or we're coming up with, or we're going to be producing an event, how are we then making sure that it's multiplied across all our different platforms, across all the different formats, and also for different audiences? So how can we cut and dice it into different ways, so that I think essentially we're all, as comms teams, we're all very limited in time. And I think it's essential for us to adopt this right at the beginning, so that when we create content and when we have an event, then right even before the event starts, we already have a list of things that we want that event to deliver, whether it's blog posts, whether it's different kinds of reports, or different kinds of surveys, or different things like that. And then finally, E is for empower your community. And so once you've built up all the systems to really develop your voice online, then the next step and the last step is to really have a community management approach, in which you're helping to amplify the voice of your community, of your followers, of your fans. And that's, a way in which you can then really showcase, the success of your clients, the success that you're having with different parts of your community, and to really be, so that they can talk about you and not just you always talking about what you're doing. So that's just basically in a nutshell. I've gone very quickly. I just wanted to give a brief overview. What I've done is I've put together a sort of a bit of a poll, just to be able to understand a little bit of what we should talk about in the next 30 minutes. And so if you want to sort of join at either menti.com or use the QR code, then you're able to then let me share my screen. You're able to join for the poll. Let me know if you have any issues. So, okay, so I see that people are starting there. And then let me share that. Can you see the
Yep.
screen then with the voting?
Yep.
Perfect. So so far that really, the first part really kind of confirms the poll that I had done a couple of years ago, which was also that engagement online was one of the major challenges for many people. Great. Okay. Super. So let me just wait a second here. Okay. So, does anyone want to expand on I guess, some of your choices, so that we can have a little bit more kind of insights on, or maybe a little bit more context?
Yeah, I think when I look the engaging my own audience online makes sense, and I think that's the priority number one for everyone. Having everyone in different locations or different places, you want to make sure that they can find the content online. So I think that makes sense, that one, why that is number one. I hadn't listed the data as second. I actually had it as sixth, because I think, yes, it's important, but I think the other ones were more important in my world. But I can see that the rest of the team are a bit different on that. Karen.
I did have the data first, actually.
Oh, all
So
right.
maybe I can explain what I mean
Yeah.
there. It wasn't so much around the use of different analytics tools and to measure engagement and things like that. That's what's working well in my team. It was more around demonstrating the value of content. So, and again, not so much even talking about like AVE, the advertising value equivalent, but more, let me give you an example. If we write a story as a university about a particular bit of research that we've done, and then a company sees that story and then contacts us because they would like us to talk to them about that technology. So that's a very clear example of how a piece of communication and content has contributed to a potential partnership. It's always anecdotal, those things. So it's not, I don't know, it's more of a comment rather than a question, but when you like to show the value past engagement, past reach, I don't even tend to use AVE anyway. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, myself would be to be able to have some clear objectives. So to have, for example, an objectives for downloads, for example. So if you have, for example, when I was working with UNEP, we had a new report that came out, and we set our objectives as far as the number of downloads that we wanted in comparison with previous downloads. So we said, okay, we'd like to have maybe 10% higher than the usual download rate, and then had, activity on email and social media. So to encourage people to download this new report. So two things here is, first of all, you already have sort of an objective that you've set for the download. So that really is, first of all, your key focus. Then second of all, you're able to see which is driving the most downloads. So is it coming more from, if you're using different URLs, then you can see if it's coming more from, if your traffic is coming more from social media or from email, for example, or potentially from search, but usually for a report, it'll be, in my view, a lot very often coming from email. So then you can see, okay, how and which emails are helping us to get the most downloads for this report. So then you're able to then maybe adapt for your next report, and then you're able to see, okay, maybe LinkedIn was great for a report downloads, so let's focus more on LinkedIn than Twitter, for example, or emails to specific targets helped us more. So you're able to have a granular approach if you look at the data, and then you're able to sort of measure that afterwards. But I think, so first it's setting up that objective of, and then after that, seeing what is helping the most. The positive thing about that is then afterwards, if you're able to follow that, then the people who have downloaded that report, for example, and then you do an event that relates with that report, they will be very, very likely to then attend that event. So then it's a virtuous circle. So if you're using kind of that approach. So that, and then what I can do is perhaps, let me see if I can look at, as far as engaging with people online, it's maybe I can I'll share. I think, you know, there's plenty of areas here as far as online kind of online engagement. I think that, okay, ideally we would all have a community manager and someone that is able to support conversations, to have conversations online, on social media. Of course, this isn't always possible, right? We don't all have either the resources to really have a community manager. The idea here is to first to have to listen to what people are posting about, that are your followers, and to be able to then respond to that. So this is also one of the best ways in which, if you have different listening tools, you can then also respond to what people are saying about your company, your product, or even your industry. But then how can you engage with your followers, for example? And I think that is, and I've put together kind of a list in this in my book, which is trying to sort of have different ways to engage with your community. Let me see if I can find it. But it's, for example, you know, setting up Q&As, setting up perhaps contests, or helping them to, or allowing them to participate in, for example, a new campaign or a new initiative to get their feedback, and then implementing that feedback into your next campaign, for example. So that allows them to be involved in what you're doing. The example I gave was in the book was the Malala Fund that set up a newsletter. But then in the newsletter, they asked people, what do you want us to talk about? And would you like to become a contributor to the newsletter? So what happened is people felt like their audience felt so interested in participating that they started submitting their ideas. Then little by little, then now they have all these contributors from all over the world that are helping to feed their newsletter, so that it's become kind of a something that has been growing on its own by using that approach, by asking people, would you like to contribute to the next newsletter? Or what are some ideas that you would like to that you would like us to talk about? So that is one way in which you can do that, either with the newsletter or online on social media. And I think that the idea as well about turning social media followers into subscribers is also trying to bring them in to a platform that you own, so that you're able to have that direct relationship with them. So I think, we don't want to be reliant on, for example, Twitter, that is changing its algorithm every day. We want to be able to then bring them to our own platform, whether that's an email newsletter or something else. And then once we have them, then perhaps, in your email newsletter sign up, why not having maybe one or two extra questions about, what their interest is, or what industry they're coming from, or a specific group that they belong to, depending on your client or your organization. So that then you're able to do more targeted emails to them. So you're able to have them you're able to write, for example, when I was working with Climate Kick, which was an EU innovation agency, we asked people, are you a startup? Are you an investor? And that allowed us to write, very different emails for these very different audiences. The startup and the investor and the student will have completely different points of view or interests, and they'll be interested in, attending different kinds of events and interested in different content. So having a little bit of that psychosomatic kind of question in your email newsletter sign up allows you to then have a more direct relationship with those people that is more relevant, and they are more likely then to read your emails. And then the last one is really working with external partnerships, as far as finding, uncommon partners that can then communicate with you on certain issues, where you can then build your audience. So, for example, with Aramco, for example, maybe it'll be, working with either different community groups or different companies and organizations that deal with the energy challenge. And so I think it's, particularly, Karen, if you're working with universities, then it's also looking at different organizations that may be interested in being associated with those universities, and then collaborating together. And then that way you're building on each other's audiences. So I don't know if that kind of answered any questions, or if there are any other additional questions. I've spoken quite a bit.
Any questions, anyone? All positive?
Yeah, if you want, I can the third challenge was the one about working with influencers.
Yep, that'd be interesting.
Yeah. And let me see where that was. So as far as, yeah, I mean, working with influencers is really about kind of developing first, the low-hanging fruit about working with an influencer is finding, the people that already follow your company. So having a very quick quick analysis of the people that follow your organization, and then seeing, if they're influential in their area. So it can be a micro influencer. and then um, seeing if they are speaking about the issues that relate with your brand, that relate with, where you want to position yourself. Ideally, it's going to be an influencer that has an audience that you don't, that doesn't know you, or that will help you branch out and reach new people. And then I think the important thing is then to sort of have a discussion with the influencer that where you set not some ground rules, but you sort of establish what are what is the objectives, for example, that you could both meet, and then what is the benefit of them being associated with your organization, and that way you're kind of you're making sure that, even though I think ideally you want an influencer to have the flexibility to create content that is, let's say you're doing an event and you want to invite an influencer to that event, and you want them to do a few posts about the event, and it's your corporate event, then of course, you'll give them some suggestions, but then afterwards, it's for him or her to develop that content. But if you found the right fit right from the beginning, i.e., it's a person that is interested in the issues that you're interested in, then it should work. And then the example in the book was that I had was the World Wildlife Foundation that engaged with that invited an influencer to the Amazon, but then they didn't know that he had arachnophobia and he encountered some spiders, and he had this video where he was like super, scared. But because they knew that he was a good fit for the values of the World Wildlife Foundation, in the end, his video was all about how amazing nature is, and it was, a positive video, even though he was quite scared. So and it was, one of the most viral videos. So all to say that they didn't sort of oblige him to do something, they didn't try to censor him, but they made sure right from the start that he was aligned with the values of the organization. So that's what I would say. And then, of course, he helped the organization to be known by some new people. So I think it's trying to find those people that will help you to reach new audiences. Karen, you've got your hand up.
Oh, Gary was first, I think.
Or Gary,
okay,
yeah.
Gary, yep.
Sure. So first of all, I do internal communication, so I have no experience at all with using external influencers, although I'm very curious about it. Because I work internally, we're able to manage our messaging, pretty strongly. How do you handle damage control with an external influencer? How do you make sure they don't go rogue? Or is that just part of the vetting process? And then once you get them on, once you're aligned with them and you're working with them, you just, hope for the best. But how do you manage something like that? Just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's part of the vetting process, as I mentioned. And then, of course, I think there's certain things where, I think you should clearly outline some red flags that, for example, no sexist comments, or no, or different things like that. And then, of course, they are speaking on their own behalf. They're not speaking on the behalf of the organization. So you make sure that they are kept at an arm's length, right? When they do speak on their channels. So I think that's the way that I would do that, without, as I mentioned, trying to control too much. But I think having that call with them where you're showing them sort of the objectives, and you're showing them the types of things that you're looking for, then that allows them to sort of have a good idea. And then I think you can, yeah, be clear about the things that you don't want, and then but to give them the flexibility to be creative, because as we know that influencers the content from influencers will work mostly when it's them, speaking in their own language with their own sort of audiences. Another way, which I also was also by the World Wildlife Foundation, was what they had done is they had developed internally subject matter experts, which then they called ambassadors. So ambassadors for specific issues. So they had an ambassador for internally for climate change, an ambassador for pollution, different kinds of subject matter experts, which then the comms team developed this kind of approach where they were supporting them, kind of like building up their personal brand, but as, quote unquote, spokesperson for the organization, but as individuals, right? So it was a good way for them to internally find those kind of subject matter experts that could then be built up as almost as if they were influencers. Karen?
That's a really a good example. I love that, the ambassador and spokesperson sort of expert approach. But I had just a couple of examples around employee advocacy and some tools that we've used at the university where I work. And we had this really great tool. I think it was called Amplify, and it was somehow connected in with Hootsuite. But anyway, it was like a platform where the university onboarded staff that have like a lot of followers on LinkedIn particularly, and they sort of curated content from the various LinkedIn channels just to make it like in one spot, so staff could easily go in and see, oh yes, that one's good, I want to share it. And then they had this ranking system that it would be like, the top influencer for the university. So then it became sort of a bit competitive. So, especially with some academics where they have like 10,000 plus followers, they were wanting to share and show that they were. So that worked really well. For some reason, we're not using that anymore. But it did work. It might be that software's not around, but now what I do in my team, we have like just a channel on our teams called like Spread the Word, where we encourage staff to pop things in that they want us to share on social, and vice versa. We put things in that we want staff to share. But yeah, sometimes it's just, we do have people who are really happy to share. It's just making them aware. You can only once a day promote on LinkedIn a post to your employees. So yeah, it's just putting the content in front of your employees for them to talk about and share. Sometimes it's a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I think though, for an event, you can have that's where I think it's great to have maybe even a WhatsApp group or different. For example, people are going to an event and then you're creating something, and through the WhatsApp group, then they're able to share and post different things with support from the comms team. So it allows you to sort of be kind of a facilitator. And specifically, for events that are far away, and then where there's only a couple of people going. So I think that's a great way to sort of encourage people and support them there. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, I want to thank you, Nicholas, for taking the time to talk about agile communication. I think it's very relevant to the time we're in right now, as you said, on the base of COVID and what we all learned and did, and now where we are moving into. So really appreciate it. Hope everyone will buy the book and get better and get more knowledge in how we do this. So
Great.
appreciate it. appreciate you being here today and appreciate everyone joining. We will meet, some of us, in Chicago for the World Conference, and the region is organizing a reception for our members together with our colleagues in Asia Pacific and Africa. It's a great opportunity to network and to learn more and to grow your global international network. So thank you very much, everyone. I will stop the recording